Allô les meufs et les mecs. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is education. On the conversation around education, I want to talk about guardrails around compromise. And I think this is an important conversation because not a lot of us think too deeply about compromise. We think about it being the kind thing to do, the right thing to do, the socially acceptable thing to do. But compromise has a lot of different ways that it can really rear its ugly head and come back at you. So I want to talk about things about compromise that I take very seriously and ways that I would never compromise as well. And I think that this is really important because compromise can be like this snowball effect. It can be the very little things that build into something very massive, where we find ourselves in a situation where we didn't really expect things to blow up or blow over the way that they did. And I find that myself, especially being the first person in my family to be in business, I came from a family of people who were in education and who were in healthcare, who felt that they had a duty to service, right? Their duty was to support people, to care for people, and to ensure that people got what it was that they were looking for within those specific systems. So if you were someone who met with my father in the education system, his goal was really to make sure that he gave you the best education possible. Or while growing up, my mother was a nurse before she moved to academia, and if you met her while she was functioning as a nurse, then you would get the best care possible, because both of them, when they graduated into their respective fields, had this duty to service. And so I grew up, especially coming from a background where my parents were professionals in the education and the healthcare system, and growing up in a very religious background where I really had this reverence towards service. It's very important to be in a posture of service, to be ready to be of service if you weren't someone who needed a service yourself. So interesting set of values and beliefs that play into how I show up in business, and also play into my guardrails, my very hard lines around compromise. A lot of us don't think very deeply about compromise and when it is inappropriate and when it is unacceptable. And so I want to talk about those things right now. And so we're going to talk about 3 ways that compromise is unacceptable. And again, I come from a business background, and I am someone who firmly believes that compromising in a way that requires secrecy, that requires that we create narratives and stories around that compromise, is unacceptable. I am not someone who is willing to compromise and cut corners in such a way where if it was to be revealed that I knew something, that it would turn and that it would make me look bad, that it would be a real hit against my integrity. And I think that my integrity supersedes performance, it supersedes objectives, it supersedes results, and not a lot of people think that way. They really do hold objectives, objective performance, objective results, objective praise, objective recognition over and above their sense of self, or their sense of values, or their sense of personal integrity. And I am someone who holds personal integrity above all of those things. Personal integrity will always supersede, and I think that it's really very unacceptable for you to ever allow someone to put you in a position where you're having to really put your own sense of personal integrity on the line. You're having to make decisions that make you feel uncomfortable, that make you feel personally like this is not necessarily helping your growth and development, but it's hindering your growth and development. And I think these are the types of situations that come up in settings that aren't necessarily service-based settings. And I think that this is really important that we have a conversations around compromise, and what kinds of compromise really do end up hurting you and not helping you. So as an FYI, I am currently situated in Lisbon. It is one of the hottest days of the year, and I am feeling the heat. So I'm managing the heat as I go, but yes, definitely something to comment on. Now, the other kinds of compromises are not necessarily positioned as such. They don't necessarily come across as compromises, but ways where you don't want to compromise yourself is being commoditized. And I think that this is just such an important concept that not a lot of us think about. But when someone sees you as a product, sees a marketing opportunity that is you, and they want to commoditize you, you need to recognize that that's stripping you away from your humanity. And a lot of my decisions, the big decisions that I had to make in the last 5-6 years of my life, were really around, am I going to be okay with allowing myself to be commoditized, with allowing my ideas, my thoughts, my vision, my goals and aspirations to be taken by other people, stripped down and leveraged for profit, essentially, or do I want to keep them for what they are, and of course, like, have a business model, have success out of them, but keep the integrity of them, keep them whole, and also keep my personal agency out of it. And I think one of the compromises that often people don't pay too much attention to is the one around their own sense of agency and autonomy. And any compromise that requires you to hinder your own personal agency and autonomy is a compromise that I would take very seriously, and take very seriously in that it might not be a compromise you want to do. And I think that too many of us are ready to offload decision making, critical thinking, our ideas, our creativity onto someone else to manage it, to support it, to guide it. And I think that those are the kinds of compromises that can really be soul crushing. I don't feel that way at first. They seem like really easy sort of quid pro quo gains if you're looking to kind of build partnerships and build a community around what it is that you're trying to do. But I think that it's just so important that when you're driving towards something that means something to you, that you never sacrifice your personal agency, your autonomy in order to get there. You never sacrifice your voice. And I recognize that, like, one of the things that have come under so much attack in my life as I have gained in maturity, as I have gained in my own personal sense of confidence, is my voice, is my ability to speak my truth and have my truth being taken seriously, and having that credibility behind my truth being questioned and pressured. And I think that the reason why my truth always stands is because I am not someone who will allow ever without a fight, and even like I will be a fight to the death around my personal agency. It's why Project Purpose exists, is because I believe so fundamentally in agency and autonomy that it's the hill that I'm gonna die on, right? Like, do not let people play into your sense of agency and autonomy, and that's a compromise that I don't think it's easy to come back from. So is make sure that it's a compromise that you yourself don't make, and it's a compromise that I often find myself sort of bumping into when it comes to working in the business spheres. And it's an interesting environment to be in, because a lot of the things that the politics that play into business are not the politics that play in service-based industries. There are different kinds of politics. There's different kinds of compromises that don't seem so big up front if you're not thinking critically about it. So it's really, really important that you think about what it is that you're comfortable compromising against and what it is you're not, and you do not make the compromises that you're not comfortable with. And that's like the last one that I want to talk about. It's like the little tiny concessions, and I find that concessions are like the death by 1,000 cuts. They're the little things that you don't feel quite comfortable with, but if you want it to be a team player, you can go with, but they end up circling back and growing and becoming a bigger deal than what they are. So I find that it's really, really important in all cases that where you do not feel comfortable, where you do not feel aligned, you vocalize that and you defend your position, right? And I am all about being a team player. I am all about, figuring things out, ideating, iterating, like not being the Debbie Downer on ideas that are coming out. But if those ideas come with concessions that are rubbing against my value system, then I'm not on side, and I will not be on side, because there are very few things that I feel would actually like impact or disrupt my value system in a lot of the settings that I find myself in. But if there is a topic or a subject that finds its way to that center, then better believe that I'm keeping that center grounded. I'm keeping it whole. I'm not going to allow it to be disrupted or ruptured because of a concession. Like, these concessions are a big deal. They seem small, but they are a big deal. And I find that a lot of the hardship that I face, but I face willingly, the path that I chose without any confusion as to whether or not it was the right choice, it was because these are concessions that I was not comfortable with. They're concessions that I would never allow myself to do. And I find that a lot of the reasons why I can feel so strongly about it is because I was raised in an environment that really did value servicing people, that really did see people with their humanity intact. I didn't see people as commodities. I didn't see people as people that as disposable, right? I didn't grow up in an environment where people were reduced to, productivity counts, you know what I'm saying? And so because of that, I take my own humanity very seriously. And when I'm communicating with someone, I'm looking to make sure that they see me as a whole human being, as a whole person, and not just as what they hope to gain out of interacting or partnering with me. I think that's really, really important. I only ever want to be in touch or in conversation with people who care about my humanity. And I didn't believe in that before. And a lot of the issues that I feel that I endured in my life is because I didn't really do a lot of pressure testing around the value systems that could end up hurting me, right? Because I used to think I'm very much a live and let live human being, but I realized that there are different value systems that can really hurt you, right? So if you are in touch with people who don't necessarily value your humanity, who don't necessarily feel like they have a duty to serve other people, or a duty to speak up, or a duty to themselves by way of their own integrity, when they hear hear something that doesn't feel right, that doesn't sound right, but they choose to turn a blind eye to it and they're okay with that. Those kinds of people are dangerous because they're not the kind of people you want to keep in your corner. And so these are the conversations that I'm having internally around compromise. And I think compromise is such a deep topic that we don't take too seriously. I think we need to take it a little bit more seriously. And on my channel, I told myself I wanted to have hard conversations this year, and I've been having a hard time having hard conversations. But this is a hard conversation worth having. And I think that it's just food for thought for you. Keep it in mind the next time that you are in a conversation with someone that involves a concession, that involves, feeling as though your humanity is not necessarily fully appreciated, or feeling as if, the outcomes of these choices are not taking into consideration personal integrity, not taking into consideration like values and value systems that are service-based. Because I think ultimately we're all on this planet, sharing this planet with one another. And I think that if we're not focused on servicing each other with the value add that we're hoping to bring, then what is it that we're doing exactly? So that's the conversation that I wanted to have with you today. Some food for thought for you. If I have piqued your interest, then do join in. We do have conversations at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future on our website. So definitely check those out. We do also offer parent-child workshops focusing on leadership development in children. We offer 4 core modules: autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept. So check out our website, see what it is that we have to offer, see the community that we're hoping to build, focusing on cultivating grit and resilience in each child and each person, building from the ground up. And of course, if you're still here, leave a like. We're on the road to 1K. Join us on our journey, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to play a small role in your journey. We'll talk to you all very soon.